Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications says it will call an urgent meeting with the SABC's board with a focus on the latest developments at the broadcaster. And this will include the court decision against the COO, Hlaudi Motsoeneng. Following the decision declaring Motsoeneng's appointment unlawful, the SABC has since decided to petition the Communications Minister Faith Muthambi to rehire Motsoeneng as Acting COO. And latest reports suggest that he may have been paid a bonus of 11 million rands. And we are joined now to discuss the latest series of developments at the public broadcaster, Director of Media Monitoring Africa, William Bird. Mr. Bird, thank you for joining us.
Thanks
William.
for having me.
Much appreciated. Now, Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng said at Mandoza's funeral that he's going to come back, and he's going to come back stronger than before. And he says this, obviously, after the courts had said that his appointment was unlawful and that the organization must not continue with that, but upheld the older decision. And of course, a series of courts have made similar declarations before. We're talking about the Supreme Court of Appeal here, so one of the most senior courts. But his view is that he's going to come back stronger.
Yeah.
What do you think of that statement?
Well, he's a bit out of touch with reality. I mean, aside from the fact that I think to behave like that at anyone's funeral is disgraceful and distasteful in the extreme. You know, you shouldn't be going and speaking at someone's funeral and to sort of support your own megalomania and your own tendencies towards irrationality. But, you know, the courts have ruled. That said, standard rules of corporate governance of the law don't seem to apply to the SABC senior management. So in as much as in a traditional rational mind approach might say that there's no way he could possibly be back at the SABC, what we know is that he is back at the SABC and for all intents and purposes probably still acting as a COO. And what that points to is a severe crisis of leadership and governance at the public broadcaster. It points to a complete failure by the Portfolio Committee on Communications and an utter failure by the SABC board to have some regard for what their role and what the function of the SABC should be.
But following that statement that I mentioned, then we read in the newspapers that Mr. Motsoeneng may have been paid 11 million rands bonus anyway, and that this is a portion of a figure of about 33 million rands also. How true do you think these reports are? They've not been proven and they've not been disputed on the other hand. But just going by the reporting, what do you think is happening and the veracity thereof?
I mean, I think if you look at what's happened at the SABC over the last sort of, let's just stick it to a year, this year, from the start of 2016, we've seen any number of appointments that have been made, senior executives that have been appointed without any due process. That is to say, the positions weren't advertised internally, let alone externally. There was no interview process. There's no minutes of meetings around these things. You know, so that kind of typifies the senior management leadership style. So the fact that now we have these rumors of these huge amounts of money being paid over and that there's no clarity on them is not that surprising. I think that had there been no truth to those rumors, they would have, as they should have been, strongly and clearly denied. You know, the fact that they haven't been suggests more likely that they are, especially given that this rumor around the bonus for this deal was already released some few months ago, and even then it wasn't disputed. So I think that sadly the reality is that this kind of rumor is more likely to be true than it isn't.
Well, there's also another story doing the rounds that says that the board itself was contemplating creating a position for him. And then after appointing him to that position, then appointing him acting COO. So what do you make of that?
This is a case of the tail wagging the dog. You know, I think that the board is there in name only. You know, it's clear that they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're being guided by others. And it would appear that those others are either the minister or Mr. Motsoeneng himself. You know, because again, there was that leaked confidential document that was not denied. About their process of saying we're going to create this position and then appoint him as in acting capacity. I mean, these things are completely out of touch with basic due process. You know, you can't, and what it shows is that they are trying desperately to, through any means, whatever, to create a position for him. It's like they go, oh, well, the courts have found against us. There's an obstacle. How do we get around it? Well, we just create another position. They don't say, hang on a minute, we're running what is meant to be a public broadcaster. What are the needs and best interests of this? And what are our fiduciary duties as members of the board to the people of South Africa to make sure that we put the best possible people into that position?
But you know, William, they would argue with you. I can imagine the chairman of the board saying to you, look, I work with this man. He's been a great guy. He's made things happen for us.
Yeah.
We're profitable. We're making more money than ever before. He's the best talent we have for the job. And that is why we've participated in appealing all the court decisions. And we've done so because we truly believe we need his talents in the organization.
So my response to that would be, well, Donald Trump is a very good TV personality. Does that mean you want him as a president of one of the world's most powerful nations? I would hope that your answer to that would be hell no. You know, so it's not to deny that he might not have talents and certain skills and capabilities, but the suggestion that he's been running the SABC efficiently and without, and economically well is simply not borne out by the fact. They're about to declare again, if media stories are to be believed, again, the fact that they haven't made money this year, they've lost more money. You know, this whole deal for which is being paid 11.4 million rand isn't a good deal for the SABC. They've paid 500 million rand, which is over 5 years, so 100 million rand a year. And for that, they've given them exclusive, so veto rights of the SABC's entire archive. They've given them they're getting in for that an entertainment channel, and they're getting a full 24-hour news channel. Now you consider the value of just those three things, and you're saying for that only you're getting 100 million rand a year. To you and I, that's an astonishing amount of money, but in broadcast terms, for that kind of money, you should be getting a lot more, which says that actually it's not a very good deal for the SABC. It's an excellent one for MultiChoice, but it is not a good one fundamentally for the public broadcaster. And for that, they're rewarding him. So the evidence is simply not borne out by the facts that he's doing this. Further, if you see the way that he went and appointed himself editor-in-chief, you know, since when is a COO, or Chief Operations Officer, an editor-in-chief? Since when do they give edicts downhill to say, this is the editorial line that we're going to be taking? You know, these aren't things that are professional and in line with good journalistic practice. These are things that are in line with the tenets of those who used to run the SABC formerly, which is apartheid, criminals and thugs, and he's behaving like them.
Well, the music fraternity in South Africa also loves him. They say, well, excellent job. You know, Hlaudi Motsoeneng gave us 90%. Everyone has been having their own hearings, this, that, and the other. ICASA was not helping. Different activists, different formations, parts of government and civil society were not assisting our cause. Then came Mr. Motsoeneng, now we've got 90%.
Well, again, I think that, again, the facts are going to offer something that's slightly different to what that is. Which is to say, do we want more local content? Yes. Is there a significant desire for it? Yes, clearly, as is borne out by this very TV station. So there's no suggestion that we don't need more local content. But I think that the way for the public broadcaster to do that would be to surface programs and issues from the multiplicity of radio stations and local and genuine community TV stations that are out there, that they could be putting that programming up. To suddenly say, oh, we're going to just do it all 90%, when, if you look at ICASA's local content regulations, they were looking at increasing it anyway. And to be clear, the SABC, for years of its own accord, have not been fulfilling their own local content criteria. So you to then say, well, because he comes in and says, it shall be so and it shall be so, says that, again, there's no clear thought process that went into that, which isn't, again, to be clear, saying that we don't want more local content. But I think that we've started to see the exceptions to that, and we've started to see the impact of that when you look at things like needle time and other issues.
Tell me now, I mean, this story of Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng has been going on for a while, and it's gone to the courts, and demonstrations, and people have been suspended, others fired, and so forth. But somehow the board, which has the responsibility to manage the organization or have oversight on the organization? And you mentioned Parliament and the Minister of Communications as well. So what do you think? What is it that makes Mr. Motsoeneng such a powerful, influential figure in the affairs of the SABC?
So look, let's be clear about this. The SABC is more than Mr. Motsoeneng, and even he has said that to his credit. So we need to be saying, even if he were to be removed tomorrow, it's not going to solve the problems that you've got. They've had 11 CEOs in 7 years. 11.
11?
11 in 7 years. I mean, that's complete madness in any corporate terms. Until very recently, most of their senior executive positions were acting positions. This is not an institution that has been running with good corporate governance. So I think that in that kind of situation where there's consistent poor corporate governance, where there's consistent interference by the minister, by the board, where your board has been changed so many times, it makes it very ripe ground for someone who comes in with an idea and wants to try and drive it through. So I think that a lot of his power is derived from that. Of course, we also know that he has a very good relationship with the minister. Then you start to talk about the broader politics of these things and saying, well, what are the links and whose interest is it that the SABC is operating in the way that it is? And when you start to ask those questions, then you start to see why he has the power that he does.
But somebody might be thinking, but why is everyone going on about Hlaudi Motsoeneng this, Hlaudi Motsoeneng that? That why should we care at the end of the day?
That's a great question. So the reason we should care is simply this, is that the SABC is the single biggest broadcaster. It should be there to facilitate and engage and encourage dialogue throughout our country. In the way that it is being run, its credibility and its ability to function is being so dramatically undermined that the potential for it to facilitate national dialogue is being further reduced. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that if we want to get a diversity of voices on our public broadcaster, it should be to the public broadcaster that we look. In other words, if we want to see different ideas, different views, new, innovative, fresh views of politics, of what's happening with the fees must fall, you should be wanting to go to your small community media for the localized view, and then you should be wanting to go to your public broadcaster for that view. And in fact, that's not what you're finding. So it impacts the kind of news that we get. So the ideas that circulate in society are fundamentally limited. So having a person there who operates as a law unto himself has an impact on how our society thinks about South Africa and the kind of ideas and views that we start to share and circulate in our country. Now, and that is a bad thing for democracy.
William, the courts have pronounced, they've said what they have said, and it seems his legal advisors, Mr. Motsoeneng, told him that there would be no use in appealing this matter before the Constitutional Court, and chances of success non-existent, basically. And he's accepted that. But he's back at work, right? How do you think all this is going to end?
I think it'll end when there's a shift in the politics that's surrounding the SABC. And by that I mean around whatever's happening at Hlaudi House and around the power dynamics that are occurring within the ANC and within government itself. Until then, it doesn't look as though you're going to get anything to shift. It's clear it should shift with Parliament. If Parliament's Portfolio Committee were to actually do their job, they could solve many of the problems at the SABC almost overnight. They could address so many of those issues very quickly, very speedily. The reality, of course, is that every time they've had the opportunity to stand up and do something and act in the public interest as opposed to factional party interests, they failed abysmally in doing that. So until those kinds of power dynamics shift fundamentally, I don't think we're going to see it. The signs are that we might, because if you look at, I think last week, the fact that the presidency issues a press statement that says, we respect the rule of law, and they specifically mention the judgment against Mr. Motsoeneng, which suggests that things are starting to shift. At least we have to hope so.
But this is a court decision, right?
Yes.
Is it being upheld or is it not being upheld? And what is the implication thereof? The court has said what it needs to say. But
well, I don't believe that it is
going another direction.
If these allegations about them making him acting COO are true, then that will be challenged. And I understand that the parties are already challenging that as we speak. They're drawing up papers, and legal proceedings will emerge. But I think that what we want to be doing, the thing that's so distressing about this is that instead of focusing on building our nation, seeing how we can produce a better public broadcaster, how we can actually get more diverse local content, we're having to focus on things that we really shouldn't be needing to focus on: basic rules of governance, basic democratic and due process. And these things, they take us behind, they undermine our international credibility. People phone us from overseas and they think that we're a bunch of clowns. And this is, being there. And instead we should be trying to lead and show how we can build, quality in broadcasting across our continent.
William Baird, thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming by and helping explain this to us and participating on our show. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
William Baird is with Media Monitoring, and you've heard what the issues are at the SABC. The courts have pronounced at different levels, and the final decision was by the Supreme Court of Appeal, which said that there is no chance that Mr. Motsoeneng will succeed if he appealed before the Constitutional Court, and instructed that he should be removed from his position. But he's back at work, and the suggestions in the media that he is going to earn 33 million rands more, and that an immediate payment of 11 million rand is on the way. Those have not been verified, but have not been successfully disputed either. And as William Baird told us, this matter has to go before the Portfolio Committee, and hopefully that's where it will be resolved.